Hi everyone, it's Jessica. It's time for the monthly hop that I do with my friends, and this month we actually have a new member in our group, so welcome to Michelle. I'm very excited for you to join us. So this month what we're doing is we are scrapbooking around the theme happy, and we are using this sketch here. I love it because I love triangles. You can find it actually in the Scrapbook and Cards Today magazine, and I will leave that linked down below. And I thought it would be perfect for doing these two photos here of my bunny Baxter. I'm not sure yet which size photo I'm going to use, so I have printed them a couple of times. But I knew immediately when I saw the sketch that was chosen for this month that I was going to want to do rainbows. And I also needed to do a little bit of math here because, triangles. So what I figured out was that I needed to cut these papers here as 4¼ inch squares. And if I do that, it's going to make my long edge about 6 inches long, and that should be enough for me to fit 9 triangles total onto my page, which is what that sketch calls for. My photos are fairly neutral. Obviously, there's some green in the grass, but like I said, I knew immediately with that whole row of triangles coming down that I was going to want to do them in some really fun rainbow colors, different pattern papers. So I just went through all of my Hip Kit Club collections, and I just pulled out anything that caught my eye. And so I have papers from all over here. Now, before I go cutting into my papers, because I am a little crazy about making sure I don't waste paper or sacrificing any of the pretty ones and making a mistake, I am using a scrap piece of printer paper here to cut that 4¼ inch square, and then I'm cutting it in half. And I'm going to use this just to make sure that the ones that I have pulled are going to be big enough. Now, obviously, some of my pieces here are full-size pieces, and so they're going to be fine. But a couple of my scraps are smaller. So like this one here, I'm like, okay, yep, that should be perfect. And what I discovered later as I started cutting things is that really I just needed to have 3 inches. So from the point of that triangle up to the long edge ended up being right about 3 inches in length. So if you are going to create this layout yourself, like I said, I'll leave that link to the sketch down below. And this size triangle worked pretty well for me, although certainly you could make them bigger, smaller, or do some different number of triangles instead of 9, because 9 was kind of a lot, but it was a lot of fun pulling out 9 different papers. So I've gone ahead and cut most of them, but on those smaller scraps, I did need to do a little bit of tracing and cutting because I couldn't quite get a 4¼ inch square out of them. So I'll just take these last 2 pieces here and trace one of the triangles on and cut it out that way instead. So yeah, that was a lot of fun. I like to cut my triangles by putting my paper trimmer down in the center and then going from corner to corner. That way I don't run the blade right at the corner of the square or triangle and kind of crunch up my paper. So it's funny because this is actually the second layout that I have done with a lot of triangles fairly recently. So I'll also leave a link to the other video down below. I just absolutely adore triangles on my scrapbooking layouts. All right, I've decided to use the 3x4 photos. I thought the 4x6 was going to be just a little bit too big. And the other thing that I knew I was going to do as soon as I saw the sketch was not only a rainbow of colors, but I was going to do some hand stitching around the perimeter of my triangles. I could see it in my head. I was so excited about it. So I am just using a ruler to make myself a couple of guidelines here for where I'm going to freehand poking out some sewing holes with my little foam mat there. Then I spent some time going through and picking out some different embroidery threads that are going to match. I was trying to kind of alternate if I had one that was a little bit lighter, then to find one that was darker next. And then I also wrote the numbers of those embroidery threads on the back of my triangles just so I wouldn't forget. It did take me about 10 minutes per triangle, so it was a decent amount of time, but I actually had to sit in the parking lot of my daughter's volleyball club for 3 hours while she was at tryouts this week. So I just actually took a camping chair and sat in the back of the car, like in the grass, and kind of just sat there and stitched. So it worked out perfectly. All right, I also matted my 2 photos with that same orange paper that's up at the top there. And so I've got that matted in white and orange. And now I'm just kind of laying these out. You'll notice I didn't do the stitching across the long edge of the triangles, and that's because I was trying to reduce some of that bulk that I knew was going to happen from the thread. So only that top triangle got the stitching all the way around the perimeter. But now that I've got all that work put in, I think, yep, that's gonna work for me. I was kind of feeling like over here was a lot of white space, and so I contemplated a few things. I thought about maybe putting a strip of paper over here, so you're gonna see me kind of testing a few things out. I thought about maybe pulling out my Distress Oxide inks and doing a little bit of ink blending back there and kind of channeling my inner Sarah Miller house. But then I was like, I don't know, it's getting to be a little bit busy. So I think I'm just going to go with a tiny strip of paper just over to the right-hand side there, just to kind of contain all of that white space and let the eye stop when it gets to that side of the page. So I just grabbed the branding strip off of one of the pieces of paper that I had used for the triangles, and I think that that's going to work. I also went through a couple of my embellishments from my hip kit clubs, the same ones that I pulled the papers from, so that way I know that they all coordinate color-wise. And I try a couple of tags up here because there is something like that in the sketch, but in the end I end up going in a different direction. And then I knew I wanted to use these fun felt clouds. Oh my gosh, I'm so obsessed with these things. So I thought this was perfect because these are pictures of my bunny Baxter. And even though the bunnies love going outside and playing in the snow, I mean, summertime, it's their favorite. We take them out into the yard and they don't go away. They don't run away or anything like that. They just kind of hop around us as we're sitting in the grass with them, and they nibble on the grass and the clover, and they just love life whenever we take them out there. So the favorite season, I have that little tag there that says favorite season, and I tried to work that in, but it ends up not making it on the page. I just think that, you know, if I could get inside Baxter's mind, he would be thinking, this is my favorite. This makes me happy. So that's why I thought it would work for this month's theme. So I'm just kind of playing around with some of those different embellishments that I had pulled. Another idea that I had was to take some of the embellishments that match the colors of the triangles and do a little bit of tone on tone. So like putting the orange embellishments on the orange triangles and so on and so forth. So that's what I'm going to start working on here, is kind of looking for anything that would work that way and then matching it up with a different color triangle. So I've got a couple of circles. Some of them have like sayings on them. I have some stars. I have some hearts. In the end, I'm going to pull in some little dots and things like that. So I was really kind of going for that tone on tone. As you can see, I had a creative director working with me as I was working on this layout. Mr. Atticus, he made multiple appearances on my desk. He was, yes, very helpful by sitting and walking right over things. But here he's got his tail in the way, and then later he like walks right over things as I'm trying to glue them down. Yeah, I'm surprised he's not in here meowing right now to finish his contribution to this video. All right, before I glue anything down, I decide that another thing I'm going to do just to kind of fill in some of that white space over to the side is I'm going to add in some splatters. So this is my Dina Wakley gloss spray in, I think the color is called Night, but it's like a dark navy blue. And so I'm adding a couple of splatters, mostly to the top corner and then over to that side there. And I love those because they dry so quickly. So as soon as I put away my splatter box, I was ready to go ahead and start gluing things down. And like I said, I need 3 inches from the point of that triangle to the longest edge. So I'm going to make this bottom triangle just kind of go directly to the bottom of the page. I glued all of my triangles down with some liquid glue because that thread does really add quite a bit of bulk, and I wanted to make sure that they were going to stick down as flat as possible. And I also, because it was the liquid glue, was able to run a little bit of glue right over top of the thread on the back of my triangles, and I think that that really helped everything kind of stick down very well as well. This layout really did require quite a bit of math to figure things out. I knew how big I wanted that long edge to be. I wanted it 6 inches. So, I had to do some a squared plus b squared equals c squared. Then here I was just double checking my math to make sure that I had calculated it correctly. And what I ended up doing was I had 8 triangles to fit in 9 inches. And so I have the top of each of the triangles spaced out 1 1/8 inch apart. And that took me all the way from the top of the page down to that bottom point. And so they're all evenly spaced. I was quite proud of myself actually for doing all of the math on this layout because it's really not my strong suit. All right, I'm going to strategically place a little bit of foam tape here behind my photos just because I do have that stitching on there and I knew that they wouldn't lay flat unless they were popped up. So I'm just getting a little bit of foam tape back here and I'm going to layer those right about there, 3 inches up from the bottom. And then here I'm just kind of double checking that I like what I have picked out for all of the embellishments. I also realized I didn't know what I wanted my title to be. I kind of played around with a few options like Baxter's, favorite place, or I don't know, I was like the great outdoors, I don't know. So I had pulled out a few of my alpha stickers from my Hip Kit Club's subscriptions, but I decided not to go with any of those. And instead I found this little die cut here that just said, "Life is sweet." And even though it was pretty small for the title, I felt like there was so much going on with all of those triangles and the stitching and the bright colors that I thought maybe it would be a good thing just to kind of tone down everything else that was happening over to the right side of the layout. So that's going to be the title. And I'm sure Mr. Baxter felt like life was pretty sweet being outside there. And then I also wanted to use this cute little puffy sticker of a house. And then also that flower is going to have to be popped up so that it's on the same level as the photos anyway. So I'm going to kind of tuck it underneath the stem of the flower, and that will help to have everything at the right level. Here's where my creative director came back in to make sure that I was doing things correctly. Naturally, of course, like cat hair everywhere as I'm trying to glue. But yeah, and now his tail, of course, in the way. So I'm just popping up that title there. I also like that it brings in a little bit of that black color to match Baxter's fur because there really isn't any other black elsewhere on the layout. And so I thought that was just kind of a nice little subtle nod to the photos. So I'm just going to take a little bit of time here, mostly off camera, to glue everything down. And like I said, add those little tiny embellishment pieces in the same colors of the triangles. And then one of the last ones that I put on, I thought I'd put one more little puffy sticker in the center of my flower there. And then I'm going to stamp some journaling lines underneath the title, and I'm going to call that done. Oh my gosh, I loved this one. I was so excited about the sketch, which was designed by Allison Davison. And like I said, it is available in the Scrapbooking and Cards Today magazine, the spring and summer issue from this year. I'll link that down below. I'm so excited to see what all of my friends have done with that same sketch and same theme. So make sure that you check the description box down below. I will leave a link to the playlist and you can see what everybody else created using the same ideas. All right, guys, thanks for being here and I'll see you next time. Happy crafting. Bye.